Serious. Do you personally know a murderer? What were they like? Why did they eliminate someone? Story 1. A friend of mine stabbed his father when he was 16 years old with kitchen knife. His father was a substances dealer, had many issues with police, and was beating the crap of him and his mother. One day, it was simply too much. X200B. It was like 15 years ago. My friend now has a normal family, is a cheerful guy, and you wouldn't ever tell he has done something like this. Story 2. Friend went on one date with a guy. I talked to him for a while. Seemed like a decent guy. Bit of a braggart, but not terrible. About a year later, he eliminated his girlfriend, stabbed her in the face and head 20 times. Answer. My mom was friends with someone she met on AOL. She had plans to meet him for coffee with a friend, but family stuff came up and she couldn't go, so her friend went alone. Nothing odd happened. Her friend enjoyed his company and they all kept in touch for years. It came out that he had 2 corpses buried in his backyard. It was very difficult for my mom to have formed this close friendship with someone and then to find out that he was a murderer. Can't imagine how her friend must have felt. Story 3. My grandfather. He grew up on a ranch. One day, a bunch of kids came over. After about 12 hours, he noticed his younger sister wasn't around. He went around the side of the barn, and there he found one of his fellow classmates raping grandfather's sister. He punched the guy hard enough in the head that the guy died on the spot. Grandfather only served 1 month in county given the circumstances. Bonus, Grandpa was a mean son of a meanie. I always found it funny that his first name was Pleasant. X200B. Thanks so much, everyone. My first gold silver. I know a lot of folks had questions about 1. Punch passings. My research on the internet shows they happen more often than you think. I found this article interesting. Answer. Pleasant, huh? That reminds me of this quote from my favorite book series Discworld. The Carter parents were a quiet and respectable Lanker family who got into a bit of a mix-up when it came to naming their children. First, they had 4 daughters, who were christened Hope, Chastity, Prudence, and Charity, because naming girls after virtues is an ancient and unremarkable tradition. Then their first son was born, and out of some misplaced idea about how this naming business was done, he was called Anger Carter, followed later by Jealousy Carter, Bestiality Carter, and Covetousness Carter. Life being what it is, Hope turned out to be a depressive. Chastity was enjoying life as a lady of negotiable affection in Ankh-Morpork. Prudence had 13 children, and Charity expected to get $1's change out of 75 pence, whereas the boys had grown into amiable, well-tempered men. And Bestiality Carter was, for example, very kind to animals. Story 4. Met one a while back at a gas station on my way to Gainesville. Was pumping gas and a guy came up and just started chatting about how beautiful a day it was. He apologized and just said he was in such a great mood he had to share it with someone. He told me he had just gotten out of jail that morning, where he spent 8 years for eliminate the man that violation his 13-year-old daughter. He was on his way to go see her. We chatted for a few minutes and he had a poetic-like monologue about not taking your life, freedom, and loved ones for granted. He started crying. I gave him a hug and wished him the best of luck. Shout out to Octavius. I won't ever forget you. Story 5. I worked with someone that eliminates someone in self-defense. I didn't believe his story, which is probably why he served time for the incident. The story he told was that he was having intimacy with some girl and her husband came home and found them and immediately attacked him. He said he didn't want to fight him, but eliminate him in self-defense. Some months after we hired him, we got word that he also had some child molestation in his criminal record. Once that word spread around, he disappeared. He had stolen some stuff from co-workers before he left. 2 weeks later, he was robbed and eliminated. outside a bar near work. Story 6. My wife recently received a call from one of her family members that shocked her. Her uncle was arrested in Michigan for a takedown that happened like 20 years ago. Apparently, a substances deal went bad and he had eliminated this woman and then fled the state. For the next 20 years, he was completely normal. Despite being investigated and questioned on 2 separate occasions, both of which he was able to keep hidden from the family. He recently returned to Michigan and was arrested due to DNA linking him to the takedown and is now on a $1 million bond. The whole family was shocked as they never knew. Answer. So I'm from Europe, don't know anything about the US legal system, but I keep seeing references to criminals who fled the state and apparently were never found. How easy is it to just go to another state and avoid being found? Surely you'd have to ID yourself, for instance, if you get a new job, and the company would then surely see your criminal records, if they do proper due diligence. But I also often read that people just used a different ID or social security, TN number or something. Story 7. Knew her in school about a year before she did anything. She really wanted a baby and was one of those women in the mid-zeros who cut a baby out of a pregnant woman's stomach, lured her to a motel with a promise of selling baby clothes, then tied her down and did what she could. X200B. When I knew her, she was nice, if a bit snooty. She was much closer to my friend than me, but if I was given a lineup of everyone I went to school list, she wouldn't have made top 10 potential murderers. X200B, 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 just Googled her. She served 8 years and has since been released. X200B, ETA. Just did more Googling on the story. I only heard about it at the time. Mom and baby survived. The other 2 women I knew of this happening to at the time didn't. If you go meet someone from Craigslist, Facebook, MySpace, the zeros, do it in a public place. Police departments often have a spot in their parking lot for Craigslist sales. Answer. I once bought a baby swing on Craigslist for one of my grandkids. I only communicated with the mom via email and text, never voice. She invited me to her home to get the swing. When I got there and knocked, she opened the door without even looking out to check. No peephole and no window. She was home alone with a baby. I told her that she was lucky I was really just a grandma and not someone out to steal her baby. I advised her to never invite a stranger to her home. Meet them somewhere in a very public place if you're buying or selling something. Story 8. I was friends with a girl whose dad ended up being discovered as a serial killer. I never discussed it with her, but she's very defensive over it from what I've heard. Story 9. A great uncle shot one of my great uncles for trying to fondle or violation another family member. Turns out everybody was tired of his shoot, so the eliminate was never reported. Nobody quite knows where the body is buried, but my guess is that he threw it into the river. We were a dictatorship at the time, so seeing bodies flush down the river was not uncommon. Answer. Seems like the most understandable cause for a eliminate. Reminds me of the case in Skidmore, Missouri. On July 10, 1981, Ken McElroy was shot to passing by at least 2 different guns while sitting in his truck in front of the pool hall in town. Though dozens of people saw the event, all denied seeing anything that would help identify the shooters. McElroy had a reputation as the town bully, and he had fended off over 20 charges for acts of theft, violation, and other violence, often by means of witness intimidation, allegedly. In the months before his passing, he was appealing a light sentence for shooting a 70-year-old grocer in the neck. Town residents had been upset over the inability of the courts to deal with him. Author Harry N. McLean recounted the incident and its background in a best-selling and award-winning book, In Broad Daylight. In 1991, The incident was portrayed in a made-for-TV movie starring Brian Dennehy and Cloris Leachman, although filmed in Texas. The Ken McElroy shooting was also the focus of the AE Network program City Confidential, Season 2, Episode 22 entitled Skidmore, Frontier Justice. Story 10. I got in a fight after HS with a guy who later put a guy in a coma, who then died, and he went to prison for it. Normal enough hoser, big guy, just banged a head into the sidewalk one too many times. Don't bang heads into sidewalks, kids edit. Also, I was upstate NY, not quite Canadian. Story 11. Normal family. Dad, mom, and 3 children. They lived in front of the house where we moved to when I was around 11. Everything was normal. We weren't the closest neighbors, just an always greet them with a smile kind of relationship. When I was around 16, he eliminated his wife with a knife in his house, in front of his children. They were kids. I think their brains made up a story about a monster when they were in court. They still love his dad, visited him in jail, and moved back with him after he was released years after. Story 12. My grandpa's friend had a wife that was cheating on him. The husband didn't really care until he found out that she was leaving him. When the wife came home, the husband eliminated her, chopped her body up, and tried to burn the body. Police were called because the guy the wife was cheating on called them because he was worried about her not coming back to him at a certain time. When the police came to the house, they could see smoke in the back and caught the husband burning the body. My grandpa visits the husband every now and then in jail. Story 13. My girlfriend's old boss eliminated his wife by spiking her drink with cyanide he took from his lab, then tried to quickly get her cremated to avoid scrutiny over the cause of passing. Needless to say, that didn't work, and he's in prison for life. It was a pretty big story when it happened since they were both relatively prominent doctors. Story 14. I went to high school with and was pretty good friends with a guy that joined the Air Force. After a 4th of July cookout where he tried to kiss some other guy's wife and got rejected, he later showed up at their place on the base and stabbed them both to passing. He attempted to eliminate a 3rd guy that witnessed it, but that person survived. The guy I knew was given the passing penalty for the takedown and is still on passing row. The whole thing really shocked me, as he was always extremely friendly at school. Never would have pictured him doing something like that. Story 15. I used to work with a dude that take down his wife while his kids were in the house, in a different room, because she cheated on him. Turns out he didn't want everybody to label him a murderer for the rest of his life, so he eliminated himself too. I didn't go, but from what I was told, everybody at their double funeral claimed they were there for her, not him. Story 16. I know two, allegedly. There was a couple who used to come to open board game night at our FLGs. They seemed to be okay people. He was a veteran, and they had adopted a special needs kid when he was like 12 or 13. So they seemed like decent people. Something I felt was always off about her, though. Their adoptive kid was deaf, and they never let him interact with anyone, and she pretended to know sign language when it was clear she was faking it. I always felt something was off about her. Fast forward 8 months, and we hear their trailer burned down, and their adoptive kid didn't make it out being special needs and deaf. There was nothing to warn him. Turns out like a month later they eliminate him, either on accident or on purpose, and set the trailer on fire to try and cover it up. One's in jail, the other's on out bail, but will be back in jail soon, I hope. Trust your instincts on people, I guess. Story 17. My first cousin eliminated my ex-girlfriend and her brother. Substances gang-related crime. It's really awkward when I occasionally bump into her family members. Story 18. He was quiet, a little odd but polite. He was our 18-year-old daughter's boyfriend. He take down her because she broke up with him. Today would have been her 19th birthday. I was in shock and couldn't believe he really did that to her. I had to hear him say he was the one who took my precious daughter's life. He had no remorse and was more worried about how traumatized he was over what he witnessed while eliminate her. He goes to trial in September and is facing natural life in prison. Story 19. Our neighbor was an amazing family friend. I thought she was my grandma until I was about 10. When I was about 3, her brother eliminated their mom. I don't know how, just that it happened. One of my earliest memories is helping clean out her house. He was schizophrenic and thought she was going to eliminate him. He went to a mental institution, got properly medicated, and our friend kept close to him. She has a twin sister who reacted differently than her, so I didn't actually know of the twin sister's existence until I was about 15. When our friend passed away, my mom started talking to the brother more often. Our friend asked her to make sure he was taken care of, and we were her family as she fell out of touch with her family after the incident. He's actually very sweet. Acts a bit like a child, but in a sweet way. He loves animals. Our friend talked about my sister and I a lot with him because we work with animals, so he loves hearing about that. He's very polite. He sometimes asks for very small things and thanks my mom a million times for whatever it is. Answer: he's very polite. He sometimes asks for very small things and thanks my mom a million times for whatever it is. I work as an RN in a county jail that sometimes temporarily holds heavy criminals because we're very close to both a state and federal court. This is something I notice often with formerly violent psychotic patients who've started to come back after getting medication. Jailhouse mental health care is insufficient enough, but better than what a lot of these folks get on the street, which is usually nothing. Story 20. I'm a criminal defense attorney, so yes, a tiny percentage are spousal abusers who escalated in violence over the years. A tiny percentage have antisocial personality disorder. A tiny percentage have extreme mental illness. Most are about substances or money, or both. Story 21. My old roommate in the Army take down someone over substances this past summer. Honestly, it wasn't very surprising. He was a roided-up fudge nutbag. Sometimes being all you can be entails sharing a bunk bed with crazy McMurder's folks. Story 22. My 2 second cousins, brothers, are in prison now. 29 years ago, they eliminate a friend of theirs, a girl. They violation her and eliminate her. She was very beautiful. They got away with it for 26 years until last year they exhumed the body and found new evidence. They both maintain that they are innocent. Answer: expect more of this over the next 10 years. The introduction of familial DNA databases and the advancement of DNA collection has put us into a whole new world of crime investigation. It's been estimated that law enforcement needs as little as 3 of the country's DNA on file to link someone to a crime through familial matching. The CODIS system, which is a database of all criminal DNA, might already have the minimum threshold needed, so law enforcement won't have to rely on the private systems. Story 23. When I was a kid in Mexico, my sister was best friends with this girl. She was a really sweet girl, kind, funny, awesome. She had a bright future. We moved away, and later it was discovered that her dad and older brothers were criminals. Her dad was arrested and is in jail at the moment. He was charged with kidnapping and God knows what else. Her brothers weren't arrested. The local community didn't like the fact that she was related to a kidnapper, especially because a lot of kids go missing in Mexico City, and they began to harass her. She was a teenager. She didn't know anything. Her brothers got pissed and shot some guys that were harassing her and got sent to jail themselves. I don't know what happened to her mom. I know my sister's friend is going through a lot of shoot at the moment. She began to drink and do substances. She never really recovered from what happened. I seriously hope she someday does. She was a good person. Her brothers were awesome. I was just a kid when I met them. I hung out a lot at their place. Their dad was cool and quiet. Her mom babysat me sometimes and helped out when my dog was pregnant. Her brothers were awesome. Mind you, I was about 8 at the time, and little kids aren't known for being objective. They all seemed like a good family. I had no idea what they were really like. Story 24. I'm a nurse, and a patient I looked after in the ICU was an elderly gentleman who'd given his terminally ill wife a fatal overdose and then tried to take his own life the same way. She died. He made a full recovery and was arrested once he was fit for discharge. I've never experienced anything so upsetting in my life. Story 25. Disguising details to preserve confidentiality. I had a client once who had spent more than 20 years in a psych hospital. I could see from records she had eliminated her husband. She was really quite pleasant, very supportive family, including her adult children and grandchildren. One day she told me why. She was diagnosed with one of the big mental illnesses. She disbelieved her husband molesting their children. He said he would just tell everyone she was delusional, so she would be hospitalized. No one would believe her, and he would do whatever he wanted. So she eliminated him. Kids went to a good, stable home with people who could raise them safely. She went to a forensic hospitalization for decades. Seemed like a great plan to me that worked out well. X200B, I believed her due to the nature of the family involvement. It was kind of none of my business in relation to my work besides, of course, monitoring some safety concerns. She didn't ever seem dangerous to me, and there was no record of any other violent incidents. People who are institutionalized for a long time always show it, in my experience, so there were ways in which she was off, and she still had the illness of course, so who knows? She could have slaughtered a perfectly innocent man. Still seemed quite nice to me. Story 26. I used to work with a guy who was a gangbanger. He was a nice family man when I met him, after he did his time and moved across the country. Answer. Same story here. Worked with a guy named Gabriel who was just the nicest dude in the world. He was always really evasive about the reason, but he did over 15 years before getting out. Found out eventually it was some gang takedown he got locked up for. I don't care what he did though. He was such a good guy, and no matter what went down in the kitchen, he was always in a good mood. Story 27. A former neighbor eliminated his mother after a dispute over money escalated. When he realized what he had just done, he lit the mother's house on fire, but forensic experts determined she had died before the fire. He went to jail, leaving his daughter and pregnant wife behind, and hung himself 3 months later in his cell. He always struck me a caring father and husband, always friendly. The takedown was by no means predetermined, but still, it surprises me that such a normal man can be driven to such an act. Story 28. Went to school with a girl that shot and eliminated her father. Guy had been molesting her and her older sisters for years, and she finally got fed up. He got frisky with her one morning, so she shot and eliminated him. She was 15 at the time. No charges were pressed, and she actually stayed with us for a few days after she left custody to escape the press. Mom was one of her teachers in school and always said she was a great kid. Hopefully, she's able to put the trauma out of her head and move on with life. Story 29. My cousin. When we were in our early teens, he moved out of state. He was always a little antisocial, but moving away took away the friends that he did have. Story goes that his best friend from back home came to visit for a week. He was 19 at the time. Things soured for the trip when he told her he had feelings for her, and she did not. This happened in the middle of the week, and they still had a couple more days before she left. One of the days he planned some sort of camping trip or hike. He took his dad's pistol with him, and during the trip, shot her in the head. They both went missing for a couple days, and no one knew what happened until they found him a couple states over with her body in his trunk. I remember him going missing very well because a day before he had texted me, which I found weird because he was always closer with my sister than with me. He was asking me what sort of books I was reading and if I had any recommendations. 2 years late, while in jail, he hung himself on the day he eliminated her. Story 30. My uncle is in jail for eliminate his mother-in-law. It happened when I was very young, so it took a while for me to find out all the details, as they were obviously hidden from me. From what I understand, it was done in panic as the police were outside at the time, and he was on substances. I don't have many memories of him. He called my cousin while we were in school once and asked to speak to me, which my mom didn't like when she found out. He's my dad's brother. The only time I've seen him since was at my granddad's funeral, sat handcuffed between 2 police officers, with his head in his hands, crying. Story 31. I live in a small town, around 10K people. There was a family that was running 3 stores and living in the middle of the town. I didn't know them personally, but my grandpa did, and he often recalls this story. Everybody knew them, and they knew everybody. They were very influential, almost as celebrities. They had 2 daughters that were 10 and 14. They were really talented and kind girls that had a large group of friends and were really friendly. The husband was a close friend of my grandpa. They went to school together. He was the best student, and everybody said that he is going to be successful. Person. They were a happy family. However, one night the husband took a double barrel, shot his wife in front of his scared daughters before shooting them too. Edit. Forgot to mention, he eliminated himself after that. To this day, the reason of the eliminate is unknown, but my grandpa told me that they